Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moni wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so happy and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please be sure to tell your kids' teachers and principals and librarians. And please subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Sara Ayres. She's here to celebrate Tales from the Coop, a spider's life on the farm. Before we invite Sara into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Why Should I Climb This Tree by Ryan Hogan, a beautiful picture book that's going to encourage our kids to rediscover our environment and all that it has to offer. A young boy can't understand why climbing a tree would be any fun, or why it would be a good use of his time. His dad is a veteran of climbing many trees and is determined to show his son why it matters. Urging children to go outside and play, the climbing tree is a metaphor for life. The boy discovers much about his abilities and how connecting with nature can elicit feelings of confidence, positivity, and peace like nothing else can. Completing his journey to the top of the tree gives the boy perspective of his own life and the world and is the final reward. You and your kids are going to love this and be inspired by Why Should I Climb This Tree by Ryan Hogan. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Escape to Play, the absolutely beautiful picture book by Becky Garish. What could go wrong when three mischievous dogs slip out before dawn to explore the farm? Follow the pups as they make a mess in every new place they go. Playful poetry and whimsical illustrations create an upbeat feeling as you move from one page to another. Be sure to keep an eye out for some special paintings hanging on the farmhouse walls. Escape to Play is a reminder to have fun with discovery. Art lovers and future art lovers will enjoy the back matter section that's full of tidbits and questions. The back matter section offers easy-to-read information about the art that was sprinkled throughout the book. You and your kids are going to love it. You're going to love the illustrations. You're going to love that classic artwork. And you're going to love finding the adorable little mouse that's hiding on every page. Get your copy today. Escape to Play by Becky Garish. Join us right now from the beautiful Bello Campbell Farm in Wisconsin. Our guest is here today to celebrate the first in the Bello Campbell Farm series. It's called Tales from the Coop, a spider's life on the farm. Please welcome to the show, Sara Ayres. Hey, Sara, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well.
Thanks for being on the podcast. Tell us all about Tales from the Coop, please.
Sure. So Tales from the Coop is a book about farm life. It covers a year of life on the farm, going through the different seasons from spring through the following winter. And it is narrated by Charlie the chicken coop spider, who is a spider that lives in the chicken coop on our farm. And she can access the internet through the spider web and can communicate with other spiders on our farm, in our kitchen, in the garden, and in our barn. And basically they send letters to each other throughout the year, just talking about what's going on in their part of the farm, sharing stories about the other farm animals and other residents on the farm. And basically Charlie, as the book begins, has her garden shed has just been converted into a chicken coop, and she's never been with chickens before. So she's learning all about chickens and, enjoying watching them and all of their antics as they grow up from being little tiny chicks up into full-sized chickens. And it also talks about how life on the farm changes, like with the seasons, the different things that are going on at a different time of year. The book chapters are each like a month, and then they talk about each of the spiders, what's going on. But Charlie shares some of the, groundbreaking reporting on what roosters actually do, why multiple roosters can't live together, how chickens stay warm in the winter, why bugs are so attracted to animals, all kinds of other things that you may not learn if you don't actually live on a farm.
And the reality is that the vast majority of kids don't live on farms.
That's true. Yes. And that's kind of the whole point behind the book, is to try to engage people, especially children, with, where their food actually comes from, not from the grocery store, but the fact that people are out there, raising animals and plants, and, taking care of them, giving them everything that they need to get them to be to the, the harvest time, and, then providing them to, the people who are going to eventually eat them. And the reality is that a lot of people don't understand how life really operates on a farm, the crazy things that animals actually do. All the animal stories in the book are based on stuff that really has happened on our farm. That part of the book is not as fictional as the spiders accessing the internet part, but it is definitely, a real story about how life actually works on a farm. And for me personally, I'm passionate about this because I really think that it helps people make better food choices if they understand, where food comes from, and they have that connection that, food is not really grown in a little plastic package that shows up, on a grocery store shelf. And a lot of the food that you find, sort of in the center aisles of the grocery store is not very close to food anymore. It's so processed that it's not really, it's so disconnected from how it was originally grown. But there are ways to get connected and, potentially even grow your own food, even if you're not living on a farm. So that's kind of, getting kids engaged in a fun way, getting people engaged. The book is it's a chapter book, so it's sort of designed for 8 to 12-year-olds, but it really could be read by anyone. Or read to people who are younger. It is not intended to be how to farm, right? It's not an educational text in that sense, but it is definitely, shares information that if you are interested in learning more about how to grow food, it shares valuable information. And, if you go to the website to get your free coloring pages with pictures of all the spiders, you can also see that I have other information there that is more directly about, how to start a garden and things like that, if people are interested. But this is really more just for fun and engagement and getting people to start ask the kinds of questions that might lead them to being more connected with, where their food comes from.
Well, I think that learning while having fun is the best way to learn. I think it engages kids. It makes them interested. So I think from that perspective, it's a great learning experience for kids. You mentioned that you're hoping or you're thinking that knowing where your food comes from is going to help people make better choices when it comes to food. How are you thinking that's going to work?
Okay. So I think, like I said, partially it's understanding that, food is grown in certain conditions, right? Or certain things happen in the course of growing, food, whether it's a plant or an animal, it has to have nutrients, it has to have, water, it has to have all the things that it needs to grow well. And, that's true for us as well, right? I mean, as humans, we need good quality, nutrients and water and exercise and whatever else we need in order to thrive. And so, a lot of people maybe are not thinking in those terms, when they're in a grocery store. But if they think more about I would want the food that I'm eating to have had this experience when it was being grown. And then you would want that same thing sort of for yourself as well. That, if you're gonna think about how you get clean water and, nutritious soil or nutritious feed for the animals, wouldn't you also apply that to yourself, right? To make choices based off of choosing the things that are going to help you grow to your best ability as well. And especially, like you said, a lot of people are not able to live on a farm for whatever reason, or do not have the space to grow their own food themselves, still make, choices every day about what food or what nutrients or what conditions that they're living in. And so this is just starting the conversation, I guess, starting the conversation, because then that conversation can frequently lead into people starting to think about the choices that they're making. Or even for kids, it's like asking questions about why do we eat, certain things. The book goes into some detail. Roberta the Kitchen Spider talks a lot about eating seasonally, like eating food that is in season when it is in season, because it's not only fresher and lasts longer, but it also can reduce, waste, because you're not throwing out, if you're getting food that's out of season and it's spoiling very quickly because it has to travel from the other side of the world or something, because that's where it would be in season, it doesn't last very long in your fridge. So you end up throwing out more of the food that you've potentially spent money to purchase.
Right.
So, those kinds of things as well, that there are things you can make choices. It doesn't mean you can't ever eat bananas, but it just means that you have to understand choosing a banana at a certain time of year when you have a locally grown apple that's going to stay fresher longer is a choice that not only adults, but even kids can sometimes ask questions about.
Yeah. I love the idea of having these conversations with our kids, because one of the things I think that we don't understand, a lot of parents are like, oh, Dad, I love this 5-year-old, but man, he's going to be 15 and 17. I'm going to have to start when he gets to be 15, I have to talk to him about drugs and alcohol and cigarettes. And man, I don't know if I can have that conversation. The reality is, the time to start those conversations is when they're 4 and 5. You're not talking about drugs when they're 4 and 5, but you're talking about what should we put in our body? What should we buy here at the grocery store? Should we buy the white rice, or should we buy the brown rice? That banana, the apple kind of thing. Where did the apple was grown down in Mrs. Kelly's orchard down the street, and this banana was transported from Costa Rica. Just having those conversations, and if we eat these foods, we're going to get this much energy, and it's going to affect our body in this way. So when you have those conversations when they're 5 and 6 years old, having the conversations about what other things you put into your body is really easy, and it's not a lecture. It's just part of a conversation you've been having for a decade.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's part of why I decided to write, a children's book rather than this is what I think about why people should, farm or grow their own food or whatever, because I think the earlier you develop some of those, really it's developing sort of the life skills, right? It's developing the valuable life skills of thinking and asking questions and all those things. Life on a farm challenges you in a lot of different ways. It's not just the concept of growing your own food and enjoying, that fresh food when it's available to you, and preserving that food so that you can have that, high nutrient food throughout the year. But it's also, the work that goes into it. The book talks some about, the humans having to go out in the snow and take care of the animals, and it even talks about how you still have to feed the animals, on Christmas Day and on Thanksgiving Day, and days that are like, oh, but that's a holiday. It's like, yeah, well, the animals still need their food. They still need their water. And even if, the people reading the book are not doing it themselves, somewhere out there, the food that they're going to be eating on Thanksgiving Day or whatever, there's a farmer out there, taking care of that food. And so it's key to have those conversations as well, that all of these things go into the things that we then make choices about. and understanding, just the impact that has, throughout, and the fact that you have to develop these life skills of hard work, determination, patience, all those things come from growing food and dealing with, loss, because not all of the animals in the book make it to the end of the book, and that is a reality on a farm as well. Some of them, it's sort of intentional that like these were always designed to go, to be harvested at a certain time, but sometimes things happen, right? Predators happen, disease or whatever, they get attacked by things. And so that is also important, conversation starter that like, can happen, when you're dealing with real life things that will eventually, be harvested in some cases. So it is, there's a lot of scope for discussion, I guess. Yeah. I did not provide a discussion guide for the book, but there's scope for discussion that sort of comes up as part of the story.
One of the things that I want to ask you is, we mentioned earlier on that not everybody lives on a farm. In fact, the vast majority of folks don't live on farms. And that's different probably than, what life was like in the 1600s or whatever, At one time in our nation's history, most people did live on farms or had some connection with it. And you are on a family farm, and I know that there's a lot of challenges facing family farms. I've heard things like the family farm is in danger, of being swallowed up by these gigantic farming corporations. What should we know about that as families, and how can we kind of support the tradition of the family farm?
Yeah, well, our farm mostly grows food for our family. We do not sell a ton of farm products off farm. However, we are in an area where there are, dairy farms and other, row crop type farms around. And there's definitely an issue with that, there are conglomerates and things that will buy up land for prices that the family farmer can't pay. So if a farmer wanted to expand their property, farm prices are very expensive. Land prices are very expensive right now. And so it's definitely a concern. I think that one thing people can do, in addition to, paying some amount of attention to the farm bill and other things that are going through, the political system, but also just at a local level, if you have a choice and you have money that you can, choose where you spend on produce and things like that, your local farmers market is more likely to support a family farm than it is a large conglomerate. Mm-hmm. Or if your grocery store has a, buy local section in the store, to choose to spend your dollars there as opposed to, the food coming from, more tropical regions or wherever it's been shipped from across the country. It's both, it can be a little bit more expensive depending on the thing that you're buying. Mm-hmm. Although again, if you're buying food that is in season, it may not be, especially at the farmer's market. And then also, we don't talk about this a lot in the book, but the reality is that when you buy food from a farm, like a local farmer, it may not look as perfect as the food that you get in the grocery store, because they'll sell, everything, not just, the prototypical perfect apple. And so that's an opportunity. My kids love the goofy looking vegetables that grow, right? The carrot that has a split. So they call it the pants carrot. They like having the carrot that has the two legs, or, the food that has funny names, like we have dragon tongue beans and we have dinosaur kale and we have, things that they actually like to grow in their gardens because it just has a funny name. And, to get, 6 and 8 year olds to just eat kale because they grew it themselves and so they'll eat it like by the handful out in the garden is a big win for a parent, right? But they actually like it because, they are excited about growing it. And so then they'll eat it and then they realize that they do actually like it and they're more willing to eat it than, basically for the rest of their lives, because instead of it being this, this horrible thing that tastes bad that mom's trying to get me to eat, it's this, adventure that I planted the seeds and watched it grow. And now I finally have been waiting for weeks and weeks and I finally get to taste it. The incentive is to not be like, spit it out, because they've been waiting forever for it. So, so it's setting people up for that kind of, opportunity. Take your kids to the farmer's market, let them pick out things that they think are funny looking or silly or interesting. Let them, taste the things that, they maybe wouldn't necessarily eat if you offered it to them, but if they got to choose it, they have more of an incentive to pick something that looks, different or crazy. And my son he loves all the things that are unusual. He loves the things that are weird. The bell pepper that has a funny little knob sticking out of it, or we have tomatoes, cherry tomatoes that will twin. So like two tomatoes will be joined together at the top. I mean, I forget they call those the snowman tomatoes, I think, that they have like multiple little lumps.
Cool.
And so they will fight over who gets to have that in their salad, for that night or whatever, because they think it's funny, and it's entertainment. Yeah. So let your kids explore that, wherever you are having the opportunity to get food. Let them explore the unusual things, that can be helpful.
And the other thing we should encourage people to do is to explore great books like Tales from the Coop. And we should also invite people to explore your website, because it's pretty cool. Tell everybody where they can go, please.
Yeah, so it's Bello Campo Farm, all one word, so BELLOCAMPOFARM.com. And then if you do /books, that's where all the information is about Tales from the Coop and the upcoming book that I'm going to be hopefully releasing soon, Tales from the Garden. And the rest of the website is dedicated mostly to my additional side hustle, which is teaching people how to start their own garden, family garden. So focusing on helping people plan and actually, get planting out there and dealing with all the parts of gardening in terms of, planting, protecting your plants, and then picking and preserving your produce.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter where you live. I lived in the wonderful neighborhood of East Boston. That was my first apartment right next to the airport. If you've ever flown into Boston, you've been in East Boston. And I had my little tiny apartment, and all I had was like a fire escape. But I grew stuff out there. And so you can grow stuff anywhere you are.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. I actually have a post on my blog about how you don't need land to grow food and all the options that you can have in terms of my custom garden plan that I have as a free download on my website. They can go in and put in how much space you have, how much time you have to spend on a garden, and it'll give you a suggestion of how big, how many pots or things you should try planting so you don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can. My contention is one plant in one pot is a garden. It doesn't matter. It does not have to be, acres and acres to qualify, anything, and it can be whatever you want it to be, right? It doesn't have to be a tomato. It can be whatever you like to eat or whatever you like to look at. That still counts. You get to decide what your garden is. It could be a cactus in a pot and it's still a garden.
Yep,
So.
absolutely. We've had a really fun time speaking to the author of Tales from the Coop, A Spider's Life on the Farm, is part of the Bello Campo Farm series. And our guest has been the author, Sara Ayres. Hey, Sara, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Anita Saxana. She'll be here to celebrate The Price of Ice, her YA contemporary romance. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com and click on the author's Click Here button at the top of the page. Find out how we can help you celebrate your fantastic book with the world. You can be a guest here on the podcast. You can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel, and you can take part in our monthly promotion program. You can learn all about that and more by visiting readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on that Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Sara Ayres. Please be sure to check out A Spider's Life on the Farm. Also want to thank our sponsors, Ryan Hogan. Be sure to check out Why Should I Climb This Tree? And Becky Garish. Please be sure to check out Escape to Play. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Mirabella Q, Jordan Saley. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.